Lance Homer, the Toronto Sun, with Terry Koshin and Rob Longley here. First day of Maple Leafs training camp, and Rob, never a shortage of stories on this day.
No, it never is around this team, Lance, and it almost feels like the first day of school, doesn't it? We wait all summer for this to finally get here, and we're assaulted with all kinds of angles. Many of them that you would expect were brought up this morning. The first being Nazem Kadri, of course, was signed his contract late last night, so we had players and coaches reacting to that, and the importance of him being in here for the entire training camp as he looks to take his career to the next level. That was obviously one huge angle. Goaltenders was a natural topic of a conversation. And one of the ones I found interesting too, and Terry probably will address this, but a lot of talk about the way last season ended. Everyone around the Leafs, whether you're with the team or a fan of the team, you know, you can't get a more dramatic ending losing that Game 7. I thought Randy Carlyle put it best that he hopes that the team goes forward from that, maybe gets a little bit stronger, maybe they can learn from it, but they still have to get better.
And of course, the other big contractual issue is defenseman Cody Franson, who is not here. Can you address that, Terry? What might be happening on that front?
Well, there's not a lot happening right now on that front, Lance, and you know, the sides are still a bit far apart. I would imagine that France is looking for something a little longer term, and the Leafs aren't willing to give that. And you know, I think that it's one of these things, though, that could happen fairly quickly when they get down to brass tacks, and I'm sure they are down to brass tacks already, but we saw Kadri happen, you know, come to a close fairly quickly when things look like they might not go that way. But, you know, for every minute that Franson's not here, it's hurting him. There's no doubt about it. It's not only because he's missing out on instruction, that sort of thing, but when you have people like Paul Ranger champing at the bit to get to be part of this team, and I think you'll be part of this team, you know, Franson loses something every day. So I wouldn't think that it's going to be a long-term thing that he's out, but you never know.
Well, no one was happier, or no one is more richer as well than Nazem Kadri. He spoke to us a little while ago.
You know, now that it's all said and done, I couldn't be happier to be here.
Have your teammates been bugging you about how much we've all been talking about your contract?
Yeah, they have. You guys have gotten me in trouble a couple times. So
they're glad it's over.
Yeah, they are glad it's over. But you know, I'm sure they'll take me out for a nice dinner on me.
Well, it's tradition at the first day of camp, the State of the Union from both General Manager Dave Nonis and Coach Randy Carlyle, and they touched on a lot of issues. Rob, what stood out for you from what Dave Nonis said?
Probably one of the more interesting things was how the new bodies are going to fit into this lineup. Obviously, high-profile acquisitions in the summer. Forwards David Boland, who scored the Stanley Cup winning goal for the Chicago Blackhawks. David Clarkson, who has been a real gritty, hard-nosed winger for the New Jersey Devils for a number of years. Both guys who basically grew up steps from the MasterCard Center here. You know, how they're going to fit into the lineup, what chemistry they're going to bring to the lineup, and how they help take this team the next step forward. And then the third big acquisition, of course, is goaltender Jonathan Bernier. And both Nonis, I thought, and Carlyle were very adamant in their assertion that, you know, whoever plays the best in training camp is going to probably get the nod for the most minutes once the regular season starts.
Well, Randy Carlyle's got a lot on his plate, obviously. The goaltenders, the defensemen, playing, working people in and out with guys like Franson away. How do you think it's going to be in training camp, Terry? Do you see him experimenting a lot? Are they going to get right into season-like conditions?
Well, I think with Randy Carlyle, I don't know if there'll be a ton of experimenting, Lance. I think he's going to want to expect some tangible results fairly quickly, and you know, really we'll start to see more of that in the preseason games once they start on Sunday in London against the Flyers. You know, Carlyle's saying that by the time the last three exhibition games roll around, he'll have a fairly good idea of what his final roster will look like. I think a lot of the lines that we've been throwing out all summer long are probably going to be fairly in tune with what he wants to do. And, you know, I still think that the biggest question is the goaltending. And although a lot of us want to anoint Jonathan Bernier the number one guy, given the contract situation and that sort of thing, that make $1 million more than James Reimer, like we've already touched on, Carlyle's adamant that the best goalie in camp will be the guy starting on October 1st in Montreal.
Do you think that one guy is going to take the ball and run with it? That's always a nice way for things to develop. But again, that's up to the individuals, and that's up to the way our team plays in front of them. And, you know, when I made the statement about you win, you're in, it's pretty simple. But again, if you play 3 and 4 nights and your goaltender's 9-1 against the team that you're about to play, and he hasn't played those 3 games previous, are you not going to go to him? That's a decision that you make at the time on the fly. So there are some variables that do take place in that, but we think it's healthy to have competition for the position.
Well, we'd be remiss if we didn't discuss leading scorer Phil Kessel, of course, going into a big contract here. Rob, what sort of things do they expect from him this year?
Of course, nobody wants to put a number on what they expect from him. It was funny. Kessel was asked about, is this the year that he scores 40 goals? And I think that's a very legitimate question. Get a full 82-game season, build on what he did last year. This might be the year that he reaches that total. He kind of sloughed it off, but he kind of admitted that, yeah, you know what, that's something. That's basically, it's a goal of mine, and maybe this will be the year that it can happen.
Now, interestingly enough, Kessel also talked about how tough it's going to be for the Maple Leafs to make the playoffs, Terry. And what's your feeling on that?
Well, it will be difficult. I mean, with the new divisional alignment now, Lance, and that sort of thing. But I think with the changes they made, adding the experience in Boland and Clarkson, and then with the goaltending depth with Bernier, I would expect them to be back in the playoffs again. It's going to be a tough challenge, but I think that they'll learn from what happened in the 7-game series against the Bruins, not just in what happened in Game 7. And I would expect the Leafs to be returning to the playoffs next spring.
Well, it was a long summer, certainly, after the Game 7 loss to Boston, and we'll have to see what unfolds for this club in 2013-14. For the MasterCard Center, Lance Hornby for the Toronto Sun with Terry Koshin and Rob Longley.